Welcome to Laplink Connections. I'm talking today with Akhtar Badshah, who has just published his new book, Purpose Mindset, and how philanthropy worked at Microsoft. And that certainly is a topic we want to talk about today. But Akhtar, first of all, welcome, and thank you for taking the time.
Thomas, thank you very much for inviting me to the Laplink Connections, and I'm delighted to be here.
Well, it is very hard to talk about your bio because it's so long, and so you have so many things to do. But I would say in one word, your life is dedicated to helping others. Is that, whether it's from teaching, organizing, you spent 10 years at Microsoft organizing the philanthropy program, and so many different activities you have done and so much good you have done.
Well, thank you very much for being that kind. I think I have been privileged to be in spaces where I'm being able to serve others, whether it's in the capacity of being an educator, or being part of a nonprofit, or being fortunate enough to work at Microsoft and use and dedicate Microsoft's resources and invest them in the community or back into teaching. So I've been just fortunate to be in roles that allows me to be in the service of others.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic, and you're certainly a role model for all of us. Let's talk a little bit about philanthropy, just because I read your fascinating book and wanted to ask you a couple questions. Philanthropy is really not a new concept, right? There's always been philanthropists since the beginning of time. What's so different today? You took, for explaining the purpose mindset, you took the role that Microsoft played. What is so different at Microsoft that make them stand out?
So I think, look, time immemorial, as humans, we have always had the spirit of altruism, right? Whether looking after your neighbor, extended family, others in need. So, and as things got mature, as we matured as a race, a lot of it fell onto the religious organizations, whether it was the church or the mosque or the temple or the synagogue that provided services to the poor. The rich, contributed to that service. So this has always been part of how we work, how we live. I think what was so interesting and different at Microsoft is that the act of giving was seen more as a way for employees. You were there in 1988. Young people working 18 hours a day, trying to change the world through technology, with really not that many options to get engaged into the community and get to know the community. And Bill Newcomb, who joined as the chief legal officer, took what was started by Mary Gates, Bill Gates's mother, which was just a payroll deduction program in 1983 to United Way. And in 1985, what Bill Newcomb recognized is that there has to be a way by which we can expose these young people into the community, because that's where they're going to establish their roots. They will marry here, they will have kids here. And Bill agreed that that was something that the company should do, and created a matching gifts program, which became an incentive as a way to introduce these people that were coming from all over the world into the community here. Now, how that has changed over time is, as much as we've seen the wealthy participating, what companies have been able to do, since the 1950s when GE started its first employee engagement program, is to get normal people to contribute and start seeing a way by which they could get engaged in the community and into causes that they cared for, and in doing so, ignite your purpose. And so that's the change that has come, where it has gone from being your immediate community to really starting addressing larger issues of society.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, what I found fascinating when I came over here, where it was much more prevalent. In Europe, we had much more, Christmas gifts or, things like that. And we didn't have the same structure of campaign, at least in the, late 80s and early 90s. But what I've also found fascinating, it was not a directed one, here, give to this organization, here are the 5 organizations you give it to, but give it to your organization that you want to deal with, that you want to support. And it would be matched by Microsoft. And it would basically be much more individual versus organizational. And I think that was also, a key success in feeling good about yourself.
I think that was the genius that Bill Gates recognized very early on, that he wanted to make sure that employees could give to any organization of their choice. He was actually quite disappointed early on because most people were just giving to their alma mater. The easiest thing, right? You come from a college knows how to ask their alumni for money. And it's just very easy for employees to say, hey, I've got a request, I will write it, Microsoft will match it. Which is why what Bill Newcomb did by forming the Philanthropy group was that he was able to introduce the employees to other causes. So whether it was Planned Parenthood, United Way, healthcare as issues, and suddenly you started seeing employees become attracted to not just their university, but to social issues that were of concern for the community at large. And I think that's where I found it being so unique at that time when it was set up. I can tell you that most companies would not do that because it is so difficult to set it up, as you have to check, you have to process, you have to make sure that somebody is not giving to some, organization that does not have the right status. But as a small company, when it was at that time 2,000 employees, it was easier to manage and build the program out as the company grew.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to otherwise take that risk and say, okay, there are so many millions of nonprofit organizations, and how do we even verify whether this is a legitimate organization or not?
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, it's a lot of organization. Let me shift the view a little bit into more of some questions that I came up in my head when I was reading the book, and that goes to philanthropy in general. I mean, you're doing good as a philanthropist. You're giving money to a cause, but often the best plan doesn't result in success. The project doesn't work out. Perhaps even there's corruption in the countries that you're working with if you're going overseas, or social issues, etc. How do you pick yourself up from the false start, from the failures, from the disappointments? Because certainly out of my experience, I was engaged in a project where the government put a stop to it, and I said, okay, I'm done with it. How do you pick yourself up? You have so much experience. What's the mindset you need to do that?
I mean, I think that it's the same mindset, right? any business you run, anything you do in life, you will have to overcome setbacks. As a kid, we don't learn how to walk without falling down, but we don't stop getting up and trying to walk again. So it's a disappointment, right? I mean, it's a disappointment when you are trying to do something which you have so much commitment to that somehow does not work or gets stopped or something happens. But I generally, my advice has always been pick yourself up. I come from that belief that generally people are not corrupt and people are not bad. But you may get into those situations occasionally. Find something else. Go look for some other issue. There is a lot to be done. And there are a lot of good people out there trying to make change. Which is why I believe that, we talk about in the business side, the growth mindset, which I think is critical because that allows you to overcome failure. What purpose does, and the purpose mindset does, is that it links it back into the community in which you want to help. And I think that to me is the important frame where there will be disappointments. But without disappointment, you will actually not recognize pleasure.
That is absolutely true. Yes. So philanthropy also has two sides. Philanthropy needs givers or doers, but it also, has receivers. And so there are people that are in need, that are disadvantaged, etc. Doesn't that mean that it's also a failure of society and a failure of government? And shouldn't we start in reforming and changing society first before we do philanthropy, or at least in parallel? Because philanthropy always tries to fix things. The causes might be in social and society set up as an organizations.
I mean, you're absolutely right. And there's a wonderful article I was reading where, today, especially the tech sector philanthropists all want to achieve scale through their philanthropy. But most people don't realize that anything a nonprofit is doing is actually a service which in some form or the other has to be provided by governments. Unlike a business which can scale on its own, you can't do scaled educational change without involving the government. You can't do scaled environmental change without involving the government. Or take any topic, right? So it is far more difficult because, yes, inherently, philanthropy shouldn't exist if governments were able to service the full needs of society. But that's not how the political structure has been set up. That's not how the societal structure has been set up, especially in this country.
Yeah.
And the role of individuals and communities has always been important in American society. Right? So the two have to work together. So the question then becomes that even if you're looking at reforming government only comes through individuals. It's not somebody sitting on top somewhere that has actually turned the levers. It is a collection of individuals that are going to come about and demand change. And to me, purpose mindset is what allows you to do that, right? So some people go and say, this is how I'm going to serve, and it is through being part of the government. I'm going to run for elections, or I'm going to join the government. Others say, I'm actually going to go and work. And through the work that I do, I will bring about change and then move into a different sector once I feel more comfortable about going there. So there are lots of different paths that you can take, but I don't think you can actually say there is no need for philanthropy. And I'll give another example. I look at philanthropy as angel investors. If you want to start a business, somebody has to put the initial sum of money to you because they believe in your ideas and there is a profit motive at the end of it. But they're taking a much higher risk. And that's what philanthropists are doing. That we will invest with the expectations that others will come in and things will change. And the eventual change will come only because there is going to be a policy change at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I think that's the higher form of philanthropy, where part of your philanthropy is the agent of change, to make the situation better, not just giving money or, and so on. It's certainly a very interesting topic.
And so let me just give you one other example, right? So the Pfizer vaccine, the RN technology, which was developed in Germany through the Bio10 research group there, very early on, it was actually funded by philanthropists. Bill Gates was one of the supporters of that lab. And that initial, which was done many years ago, and they were actually working on cure for cancer, which became the technology that got used for what we are in today.
Right.
That initial investments were made by philanthropists, which then became government investments, private sector investments, as research grew and developed. So the importance of people taking that risk and investing resources is something that is part of human nature. It's just where we choose to invest our money, whether it is in for-profit commercial returns or societal returns. Purpose allows us to choose societal returns also as a way of investing.
Yeah. Now, that said, it's not always about money. Yeah, money might be important, but it's also about action and doing something. You yourself are highly active in the community locally, but also globally. Tell us about your recent initiative of Restart Partners, because for me, that means that is really kind of a hands-on initiative to get something done.
Well, I mean, that's, and Megan, who's on this call, knows the story. But these are, again, what is the mindset you bring, right? You get a call from a friend who says, hey, there is a better way in which we can keep the economy open and keep everybody safe. I have some ideas. What do you think? And you look at it and say, I really don't know what the heck you're talking about, but maybe I can make a couple of calls. And you pick up the phone and make a couple of calls. And the couple of calls leads to other couple of calls. And then suddenly you find yourself in the middle of an effort, which is essentially saying, even though there is a pandemic, and this was last May, if we could only get people to adopt safe practices, we were able to keep our economy open. And for us to be able to get people to adopt safe practices, we should be focused on science and data and use data to predict what the needs are going to be and science tools to change mindsets. So Restart Partners started with that belief. And what we have been doing since last May is determining PPE needs for various states around the country so that they know adequate requirements that they need to procure. We have launched initiatives that are getting masks into the hands of kids. And we've launched efforts to change mindset using Facebook and partnering with them to run adoption campaigns, mass adoption campaigns, where we've actually seen 4.5% lift of changing behavior, which is directly leading to saving lives and opening up business. And now we are actually extending that work into vaccination and getting people, to make sure that they get vaccinated, continue to practice healthy behaviors, and creating a dashboard for small businesses, particularly small businesses, so they can actually have the tools that are at the disposal of large companies, what safety requirements they need to ensure that they can open up with confidence and bring consumer confidence. So this is an effort that started off as just people volunteering their time. And one phone call led to another, and suddenly the governor got involved, and we got these campaigns, and the Department of Commerce came and said, you got to do this work, and you got to apply for a CARES contract. And now we are suddenly obligated to doing things versus what we were doing previously. But what we've suddenly found is that we've got people, students are working, different groups are working, communities are working, business leaders have come together, including the fact that we are actually also training or going to train people in other countries how to use the same approach and the methodology that we have developed. So to me, I tell my students and everybody, don't say no. If something comes to you, just go with it. You have no idea where it will lead you. Never say no. And if somebody tells you no, don't listen to them. Go back, ask them why. So it's that attitude that we need more so that people can truly make change. I'm not a technologist. I don't know half the stuff that these guys were talking about. But I knew enough to be able to say my strengths were opening doors. And that's what I was going to do.
Yeah, it's absolutely a cool effort, and everybody who's listening should go to Restart Partners and look at the webpage and what has been done. But so clearly now, after this talk, I know who to call if I have an idea. But what do you suggest for a person to do if they're not part of a highly engaged company or enterprise, and they want to help others, but they don't know how to go about? Where should he or she turn to? What's the best way for the entry?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example, which is there in my book. Kevin Wang, young employee, techie, but he was more interested in getting kids, high school students, learn computer science. That's really what he wanted to do. And he started off his career by teaching in a high school in the Bay Area, went to Harvard, got a degree in education, came to work at Microsoft, and in his free time would go to a school in Ballard High School and teach a class of computer science along with another teacher there. As word got out, more principals wanted a similar program here, and he got a couple of other friends of his to volunteer time and do it. He would come into our office and ask us for money and resources. And I was looking and saying, what are we talking about computer science? I can't even get kids to basically open the computer, and you want me to teach computer science? Go away. And, you know, just to keep him happy, we would write small checks for him to keep doing his work. He never stopped. He never took no for an answer. He kept finding levers to change. He kept finding more people and more schools. His CVP in his group heard about it. He was retiring, and in his exit interview with Satya Nadella at that time, when Satya was still not the CEO, he told the story to Satya. Satya picks up the phone, calls me and says, what are you doing? You should be supporting this guy. Why is he working for me? He should be working for you. He never stopped. That program now is in 600 schools in this country, all run by volunteers. They commit for a year to teach. Employees from Amazon, Facebook, Google, Twitter, defense companies on the East Coast, other companies, remote learning. We were doing remote learning even before we all became remote, because we were teaching in rural schools where there were nobody there that could actually go into the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the story here is, don't give up. Just because I was running philanthropy doesn't mean that I was smarter than other people. I said no. Right? It's not that I was some genius and recognized this program, so it's going to become such a fantastic thing for Microsoft. Now it is one of the highlights of what Microsoft is doing. So don't assume that just because you have so committed to this, everybody else will understand it. Find different ways to convince people. And eventually you will be successful. It may take time. It will be frustrating. But then, you know, if you're not frustrated, what's the fun in life?
That is correct. If we're only happy, you know, I don't know what happens. No, it has been a fascinating discussion. I'm really grateful. I think we could talk for hours about, you know, other things. But thank you very much for joining me. Last thing, again, Purpose Mindset. It's a great book to read. It's not about to tell the story how great Microsoft is. It is the story about the purpose mindset and also using Microsoft as an example. And I think there are great stories in there. And, you know, clearly we also have to realize it's not all about money. We have millions and millions of volunteers and communities, that have no money, that, as you said, you know, working through churches, you know, working because there's time, working, volunteering in school. The volunteer heroes, you know, are everywhere. And it's not all about money. You can do philanthropy without money and engage and also change. That is certainly possible. Akhtar, thank you so much. And I appreciate the time and hope we talk again very soon or engage together on something.
I would love to do that. And thank you so very much. Looking forward to it. And thanks for this opportunity.